Be much pleased to return to more domestic pursuits.
Seems like Queen Alicent is finally beginning to reap what she had sowed all throughout her time in House of the Dragon. We've always seen her to be an emotionally unavailable mother who's taught her sons nothing but hatred. But Aegon and Aemond have grown up to be dysfunctional men who always feel the need to prove themselves. And maybe if Alicent had given them values of love and kindness, the Dance of the Dragons would not be an example of one of the most vicious wars in Westerosi history. While the Queen never had a lust for power earlier in the show, once Alicent got a taste of what power really feels like, she wanted it all for herself. But was she really dumb enough to think that she would maintain the same level of power once her son Aegon was crowned as the king? Sure, Alicent is evil in her own machinations, but still, she is no Cersei Lannister. While she could control King Aegon to some extent, her voice simply stopped mattering once the king came back from Rook's Nest in a half-dead state. And let's be real here, if Alicent had not hurt Aegon by asking him to sit back and pretend to be the king while everyone else is making the decisions for him, he would probably have stayed in the Red Keep instead of flying his young dragon to war in a drunken state just so he could prove himself to the council. Aemond, on the other hand, didn't think twice before roasting his brother alive. And now that he's become the ruling regent, the wrath of the one-eyed prince is uncontrollable. Still, Alicent has simply no right to be salty about not being chosen as the regent by a regressive council who believes women should not rule. On top of that, the Dowager Queen is clearly spiraling after her son just fired her from the small council. With that being said, let's discuss what possibly drove Aemond to take such a harsh decision against his mother. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
That need is ended. You are no longer obliged.
Why did Aemond remove Alicent from the small council table? Prince Aemond has been out for blood ever since he used Vhagar to burn his brother, King Aegon, while he was fighting with Princess Rhaenys and Meleys on Sunfire. Not just that, after the battle at Rook's Rest was over, Aemond came back to look for his brother, and if it weren't for Ser Criston Cole, sure he would have finished what was left of Aegon. Once Alicent looked at Aemond and saw Aegon's Valyrian steel dagger with him, she got all the clues she needed to figure out that her one-eyed son had something to do with his brother's roasted state. The Dowager Queen has always been wary of Aemond's ruthless and impulsive nature, but even she didn't comprehend that he could go to such lengths for the sake of grasping power. Even Otto has been very vocal about Aemond's arrogance in the caprice of his youth and was very aware of every move he would plan outside of the council. To make things worse for the entire realm, the small council unanimously voted for Prince Aemond to serve Aegon's regent instead of Alicent. Mind you, the council basically believes that Aegon would never recover from his burns, and that would mean the regent would inevitably be in the position of supreme power for a long time. Even if Alicent had the experience of ruling the realm, the patriarchal small council of the Green faction would never see a woman holding so much influence. That's literally why they helped a dumbass like Aegon usurp the Iron Throne from Rhaenyra. But then Alicent really didn't see it coming when both Criston and Larys opposed her plea for regency. With her father away from court and her aggressive son playing regent, Alicent was already losing her influence in court, and they were the last strong allies at the council table. But the real twist comes in the latest episode of House of the Dragon Season 2, as tensions flare during the Green's small council meeting. We see Aemond react pretty angrily when Jason Lannister subtly orders him to bring Vhagar to the Reach if he wished for the battle to commence. The council also discusses sending Tywin Lannister to negotiate with the Triarchy and dispatching Criston Cole with the rest of the Green army to take Harrenhal from Daemon. Now, what really flummoxes Alicent is when a council member proposes a marriage alliance, and while she outright turns it down, we do get to see how Aemond ignores any counsel coming out of his mother's mouth. After the meeting is over, the Prince Regent then speaks privately with Alicent and informs her that although she has served the realm very well in its time of need, he is removing her from the council. According to Aemond, she has no designation to have a seat at the council, and given that the table is already overflowing with temperance, her presence only undermines his authority. Alicent protests this by asking him how much blood would he shed till the indignities of his childhood were fully avenged. But Aemond insists it is not up for debate. and asks her to resort back to the more domestic affairs of the Red Keep. It's almost like asking a capable person to go wash the dishes instead of working in the field, simply because they're a woman. Anyways, with the Dowager Queen removed from the small council by her son, Prince Aemond, Team Green loses its only female voice, making Aemond even more dangerous as regent for the Green faction in House of the Dragon. Now, while Aemond doesn't explicitly state it, he removes Alicent from the small council to prevent her from challenging his authority. Alicent is one of the few members on the table who's brave enough to stand up to Aemond, question his impulsive decisions, and openly disagree with him. She does so in a way that keeps Aemond from reacting too angrily, but she still doesn't feel as restricted as the other council members do in the presence of the one-eyed prince. Alicent's confidence comes from her experience, having previously served in a similar role when Viserys was still alive, and I think the Prince Regent is well aware of that. You have to understand that Aemond is the closest thing to a tyrant that House of the Dragon's timeline has seen ruling from King's Landing, and this accusation mirrors the exact one recently made by the River Lords about Prince Daemon's rule at Harrenhal. As a regent with tyrannical tendencies, Aemond doesn't want anyone on his council who would dare to challenge his authority or call him out for what he really is, an impetuous and resentful boy who's just looking for a reason to avenge every wrong that has been done to him in his youth. Aegon made the mistake of publicly bullying him in a brothel, and as a result, literally in the next episode, we see him coming home in a box with half his body burnt or broken. Sure, the council members at the table understand that Aemond is not to be screwed with, but with Alicent on his council, his selfish plans and desires as regent are more likely to be met with constant meddling. At the moment, Alicent is arguably the biggest threat to Aemond's power and dominance over the council. While she does fear Aemond to some extent, she knows that he's less likely to lash out at her than at other members of the council. Aemond may also worry that having his mother advising and questioning him makes him appear weaker and less capable of ruling the realm on his own. So, by removing Alicent, Aemond eliminates the barrier that prevents him from being seen as a strong warrior and a firm ruler, rather than the hot-headed, reckless boy he is. But again, the Prince Regent might also rob his mother from the last bit of her influence, out of spite. If you remember, when Aemond first walked into the small council table to take his place at Aegon's court, it was Alicent who stopped him in front of everyone and pretty much reminded her son how it was not his business to attend any of these meetings, given that he has no seat on the council. Of course, he was there only because Aegon asked him to, but the way Alicent rebuked Aemond was just brutal. For all you know, my man here simply decided to give his mother a taste of her own medicine. Is Queen Alicent a weak link for Aemond? As you know, Prince Aemond felt slighted throughout his childhood, and Alicent serves as a constant reminder of those injustices. Besides always believing he was more fit to be the king, Aemond was always teased and bullied. Aegon didn't leave a single moment to make his younger brother feel inferior, and that pattern continued into adulthood. With Viserys old, sick, and neglectful of any of his children who were not named Rhaenyra, Aemond relied on Alicent to protect him from Aegon's mockery, who was an even bigger bully to him than Jacaerys and Lucerys ever were. Plus, as Aemond's mother, Alicent witnessed all his childhood struggles and was one of the few people who remembered each of these moments, which he viewed as his point of weakness. She understood that Aemond's need for revenge stems from his insecurity of never feeling whole, and being constantly reminded of this really undermines his image as the Prince Regent. It's quite clear that Aemond has been determined to eliminate anyone who reminded him of his mistreatment and vulnerabilities, which has literally led to Luke's death, Aegon's near-death state, and now Alicent's removal from the council. So Aemond's decision to remove Alicent from the small council might also stem from a lingering resentment towards her for not protecting him from Aegon and Rhaenyra's children all those years back. He also saw how powerless she really was because Alicent couldn't avenge Luke for taking Aemon's eye, which is ultimately what forced Aemond to seek his own revenge years later. Maybe he thinks that if his mother couldn't enforce proper justice onto the little boy who took his eye when they were children, how could he expect her even-tempered opinions to be of any use to him on his war council? And given his obvious mommy issues, he surely looks to her for validation in some twisted way. So I doubt he would ever want to harm Alicent like he did with his brother. Maybe he removed her from the entire fold even before Alicent does something to reach the point that would get her on his bad side. That would definitely drive Aemond to do something rash, and maybe he's just trying to prevent that from happening. Who knows? Removing Queen Alicent from the small council was the worst mistake Aemond made. Alicent has always strived to do her duty for the protection of her family and the rise of her house to a position of power in the realm. But Alicent's influence on the small council has steadily declined with the departure of her father and ally Otto Hightower as Hand of the King. She's now leaning towards rock bottom with Aemond's aggressive rise to power over the indecisive King Aegon. Removing Alicent from the council was likely inevitable for Aemond, given how she had been sidelined by the men at the council. However, I think Aemond's reasons for this decision are more complex than simply wanting to silence his only female advisor. Aemond might think he can make tougher, more decisive choices without his mother's softening influence at the council table. But he's too hard-headed to understand that this softening influence might be exactly what he needs to make wise decisions for the realm. Without Alicent's moderating voice, Aemond is more likely to make rash decisions that could lead the Greens straight into disaster. While Aemond has shown himself to be ruthless, somehow he still doesn't believe he's tough enough to do what needs to be done. Just the idea of an even more hard-hearted and violent Aemond is truly terrifying, given the shocking sins he's already committed so far in House of the Dragon Season 2. So, in his quest to harden himself against any idea of love or kindness, Aemond risks losing all traces of humanity, potentially dooming himself and the rest of the Greens to a fiery fate. Still, Aemond going unchecked as the Prince Regent is a recipe for a disastrous scenario, as it would only lead the realm to dive into shattering chaos, with his poor sense of long-term planning and a lack of interest in resolving conflicts for peace after war. But Alicent was one of the few voices of reason on the small council table, and understood the need to keep up with public appearances, just like her father did. Even when she ruled on behalf of the late King Viserys, Alicent offered wisdom and was never afraid to express dissenting opinion. As one of the only calm and stable advisors who advocated caution and restraint when necessary, removing her was truly a dangerous mistake made by Prince Regent Aemond in House of the Dragon's unforgiving dance. Does Aemond know about his mother's affair with Ser Criston Cole? Even though House of the Dragon is a show about family, we know that both Aegon and Aemond didn't exactly have very emotionally available parents while growing up. Even though Alicent showed a modicum of motherly affection towards them, Viserys probably didn't even care for their presence. And that's probably why both the brothers grew up to be such messed up people. But of course, there were other contributing factors behind their crudeness. Although he's not their biological father, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Ser Criston Cole, played a significant role in raising Alicent's children, especially the boys. Apart from teaching them how to fight, Criston furthered the fuel to encourage Aegon and Aemond's hatred for their half-sister Rhaenyra and their Valyrian nephews. Aemond, in particular, has taken many cues from Criston in becoming a skilled fighter with a similar puritanical attitude towards women. As Alicent's sworn protector, Criston Cole sees it as his duty to look after her sons. Given Viserys' neglect, he's been like a father figure to them, teaching them how to fight and instilling the kids with a sense of respect in them. If you remember, while searching for Aegon in King's Landing, just after Viserys' death, Aemond and Criston visit a brothel, thinking Aegon might be there. When Aemond makes a vulgar comment about his last visit to the place, Criston disapproves of it by mentioning how every woman is an image of the mother and should be spoken of with reverence. Although it is pretty funny coming from Criston, given that he has dedicated his entire life to destroying Rhaenyra just because she had rejected his romantic advances years ago. But we all know what a hypocritical prick Cole is. This scene was particularly funny, given that he's called Rhaenyra the whore of Dragonstone, and that's not exactly the action of a man who believes every woman is an image of the mother. But despite his shortcomings, Cole was the closest to a father figure Aemond had, and because Criston saw his young self in Aemond, he guided the prince accordingly. But you might wonder how it's relevant to our topic of discussion. Well, nothing remains hidden for too long within the walls of the Red Keep. By now, Larys Strong, Grand Maester Orwyle, and maybe even Gwaine Hightower have gotten a whiff of the kind of relationship Alicent and Criston have. And given that Aemond is actually much more calculating and conniving than he lets on, I think it's more than plausible for him to know about his mother's affair with the king's hand. Aemond might be rash, but he's not ignorant like his brother. The biggest example was how he publicly insulted Larys Strong for even thinking that a manipulative man like him would ever dream of being his hand. So when he asked Alicent to redirect her her time back to the more domestic affairs of the castle while firing her from the council, it's possible that he was implying about her affair with Cole. Also, he asked Criston to leave for Harrenhal, even if everyone opposed it. Criston pretty much stopped Aemond from killing his brother at Rook's Rest, and he clearly has the upper hand here, as he can expose the Prince Regent to further his cause. But somehow Criston kept his mouth shut and simply followed orders, which really makes me wonder if Aemond is holding something over his head. Plus, I don't know if any of you noticed, but when Aemond asked Alicent to get back to her domestic affairs, the Queen was visibly shocked. Is it possible he was giving a hint to Alicent that he knew about her sin? I mean, given the look on Alicent's face, I don't doubt that Aemond is beneath threatening his own mother. Plus, he's nothing like his older brother. Aegon is hot-headed, and if he ever found out about his mother's affair with his hand, he would probably lose his mind and have Cole killed for treason. But Aemond, being the more conniving dude he is, would definitely hold this information over their heads to further his own machinations. What do you guys think? Aemond really passively-aggressively blackmailing his mother and Cole to get his way? Or is he simply being the reckless prick clearing out the council of everyone who might oppose his decision? Let us know about your thoughts and theories in the comment box below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.